It is seldom the case where one chooses to become an undead, unless it is one of the more powerful of their number, or one possesses the dark heart needed to take up such a form of existence. And yet, there are still many that make such a choice, for a large myriad of reasons, be it a wizardly necromancer seeking to become a lich, or a mighty paladin vowing to be a death knight. But many overlook those of a higher spiritual alignment. Those who would be classed as priests or clerics have their own form of mighty undead, be it to themselves or to other holy figures of a dark or death god, have this remarkable ability to create a unique form of undeath that many overlook, simply referred to as a mummy, called so for the mummification process required to preserve them. Although that's wrong, actually, because it's not the process that is needed, just the fact that the body is preserved. But I'll get more into their exact creation process later. For now, I will speak more of their role and religious aspect. For, as I said before, they are holy and spiritual in nature. To sum up the mummies in one sentence, they are undead guardians to a holy place or figure, but that would only be scratching the surface of these bizarre creatures. For a start, some cultures actually view becoming a mummy as a virtue, not a horrid undead thing that they are. They think that becoming a servant in such a form is an honor to be respected, even by those above their station. For most of a mummy's existence, however, they slumber, in a sort of endless torpor until they are in a way activated. This is often in order to serve the reason they were turned into a mummy in the first place. For example, if they were made to protect a location, and if it was broken into, they would come to life in order to defend it, only to slumber once again when the intruder was gone, typically returning to whatever casket they were put into. Or, for another example, if they were told to serve a specific person or class of people, they will awaken in order to follow out their orders, and then slumber once again if their task is complete, unless ordered otherwise. But they can also be quite forgiving, shall I say, since they don't often really care about the meaning behind the task, just that the task is completed. They don't have a sense of justice. So, for example, if you were to steal something from their tomb, say a priceless urn of some distinction, and they were tasked with keeping it safe, if you were to return it to them, they would put it back and stop hunting you. They wouldn't punish you for stealing it. Most mummies are made to serve, and are quite often willing to do so, viewing it as an honor, as I said before. When they do this, they often take on a vow, or at least know the task they will be given before they become one, be it the form of a guard, or perhaps some sort of keeper of knowledge, since they are still capable of speech, and indeed, they're still the same person they were in life. These ones can also be equipped in powerful weapons and armors, sometimes magical ones, and even artifacts, depending on their task's significance. But I should also mention that not all who are turned into mummies are willing, and indeed anyone can become one if the right circumstances are met. I know of a few places that turn unwilling slaves into mummies upon their death, meaning that even in death they are forced to be servants. But what makes this worse is, unlike the other dead animations that you can find, these ones are fully aware and conscious, and some can even speak, depending on how much care was put into the making of them. But they also cannot betray any task they are given, meaning that they must magically obey whatever order is given to them. However, some do view this as a punishment as well. Say a criminal who killed many people in their life will be turned into a mummy to guard a temple until they believe they have served for long enough, and then they are destroyed by their creators, if they view the crime as redeemable, that is. Some might serve forever, even more so if their original creators are killed or they are forgotten about. There is another form. This one is often self-inflicted, and it is much more powerful. It is a form way above other mummies, often on par to the most powerful of liches, the dreaded Mummy Lord. But these will have to be a topic for another day, since their level is just so much above that of a normal mummy. For now, just know that they are a lot more difficult to make and very specific in their processes. But now let me get into the creation of a regular mummy. So, as I said before, the body must be preserved. Not perfectly, mind you, but very, very well, to the point where they will be quite recognizable hundreds of years down the line. When cultures that approve of this process do this in some form, they often have their own rituals. Many will do something like remove the organs and cover them in wrappings, but others can cover them in this form of wax, and there are many, many processes used in order to preserve a body. If you're interested, I highly recommend researching this sort of thing. For the basic mummies, ritual like this are actually not a required step. It is, however, a required step for mummy lords, but I will go into detail on those another day. But any natural process that preserves something would work for a regular mummy. Say, freezing a corpse in a block of ice, provided it stays frozen that is, or implanting it in a swamp or a bog, something like that. Something that will not let the body decay in some form. Then, some time later, a holy figure of some sort, typically a cleric or sometimes a priest, must perform a ritual to bind the dead being to them and transform them into a mummy. As a note, the wrapping and bandages that is very commonly associated with mummies is actually not a requirement for them, but it does make their creation much easier and it will keep them intact a lot more, so most of them will still do this. I should also note that a powerful necromancer or lich can create a basic mummy in this way, typically the ones that serve dark gods do anyway, but they cannot create a mummy lord. That is only something possessible by powerful clerics and priests. But after this, they give them their task, and this can be as vague as serve me forever, or as complex as guard the grand dining room silver cutlery, but not the golden ones, but not the silver ones with emeralds. Unless the golden ones have rubies, then guard them as well. As silly as that sounds, I imagine making a more complex order would actually be better, since there's less chance of them doing something unwanted. Remember that mummies are magically sworn to follow their orders, so even if, say, a regular guard would understand, oh, I should be doing that, if it wasn't worded, and even if the mummy wanted to fulfill a task by its meaning, not its exact wording, they can't. This is why specifying exact orders is very important. Also remember, they are still capable of speech, meaning that if you've ever seen a group of undead attacking something while apologizing or telling someone to run away, they might have been a mummy, unwillingly following a command. So because of this, I should get into what they are capable of in a fight, since you probably need to know that if you ever meet one. For a start, the mummy can be armed with anything its masters want it to have, be it weapons, armor, or other forms of equipment. Some are even magical. However, it will only be skilled with them if it was so in life. This is why many cultures view becoming one as an honor, since you are basically saying that your skills are so impressive, you will always be one of the best in this. I want you to do it for eternity. But regardless of what they use to attack you, be it a golden detailed sword or their own rotting fist, this will lead to the actual part that scares people, that being the curse of the mummy. See, when a mummy hits your body and you're not strong enough to fight it, it will drain at you. Your very life force will fade away. You will begin to decay, slowly over a matter of days. You will rot, and you will wither, and if not treated, you will slowly turn to dust. Luckily, if it's just a regular mummy, it can easily be undone with a remove curse spell, or something similarly powerful. This is not the case for mummy lords, however, but again, another day. However, helping a person afflicted with this curse with normal medical help will in no way halt the decaying process, mind you. This is a purely magical curse. The last ability a mummy has that you need to be very wary of is its dreadful glare. This is a sort of magical spike that you feel if you stare into the eyes, causing unimaginable fear in the target, and this fear can be so bad that it even freezes you in place, not knowing how to react. This is, however, something that only strikes you briefly, and if the mummy wants to keep affecting you with this, it needs to reapply it constantly, making it weaker than one would seem, as once you can overpower this effect once, it can't really phase you anymore, at least until, say, you haven't seen one for a day. But this is not the case for the mummy lords, for theirs is on another level entirely. It does also mean, however, that if a mummy's regular ability were to fail, the Mummy Lord can then use theirs again after. But I should also mention that they have a glaring and obvious weakness for fire, in any form that is, will absolutely destroy a mummy in no time at all. This is not because of the bandages, mind you, as I said before, they don't need them, but the magical process that creates them just so happen to make them very susceptible to fire. I imagine this is because of its holy origin and nature. It's a very common saying at this point that when opening a coffin, make sure you have a torch at hand. Many think this is because of vampires, but in truth, it is actually for mummies, which people are a lot more likely to encounter than they think. See, some cultures make mummies without even knowing that's what they are making. I know of one tribe far to the north whose ancient tombs are protected by what they call a draugr, but I know them to be mummies. My tale of a mummy, however, is a bit more comical given how it became a kind of problem. See, there was a mighty warrior called Azilvagar, who, following his culture's virtues, took up the honour to become a mummy, and was sworn to protect the purest of the royal bloodline. The thing is, they specified to follow the descendants, not the dynasty. This means that when the ruling monarch awoke Azilvagar to serve him as a mummy, the mummy took one look at the young king and wandered off, for it sensed another it viewed as more worthy. This more worthy person happened to be an 8-year-old girl called Lily, who was actually in school when this shambling corpse covered in detailed bronze armor barged into the room, pledging eternal service to her. After quite a bit of confusion and explanation of many people trying to figure out what exactly happened here, I was one of the mages called in to do so, by the way, turns out at one point there was this political coup where the original royal line was sent into hiding, and she was one of their descendants, whereas the current rulers were of a new line, hence why the mummy ignored them. Hilariously enough, they let her keep the mummy, although it was a huge political scandal that actually sort of started growing animosities that resulted in a civil war. But that's something we don't have time for. But while she was scared of the mummy at first, understandably so, she now treats it, well, if I'm being honest, a bit like a teddy bear. She had tea parties with the mummy, who, mind you, does talk every now and again, and is surprisingly okay with the events that have happened, and even plays along at times. This was a few years ago now, mind you, and if I'm not mistaken, she is going to be attending the magical college my family owns in the near future, so it's not too unlikely I should meet her again. I'd have to ask how she's doing if I do. Mind you, the image of an ancient mummy warrior with a small pink hat on helping a small girl is so funny I felt it needed to be shared despite it being a sort of outlier. The mummy is quite fascinating when it comes to the undead. It's always interesting to find a form of undeath that is more respected, even if it's only in some parts of the world. It's worth noting. The creature also being more religious than arcane is something to note, and that is another greater detail I will go on in our next discussion. That of the Mummy Lords. But again, you'll have to wait for now. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me. But, till next to me, fellow traveller, have a good day.